If you're tuning in right now, it's probably because you're looking for an edge. You're trying to figure out where the leverage actually is in a world that honestly feels like it's just shifting under our feet every single day.
Yeah, it really does.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tearing into a source document that essentially serves as a blueprint for the modern economy. It's titled Student Entrepreneurship: 10 Ventures for the 2026 Skill Economy.
And I'll be honest, when I first started going through these notes, my initial thought was to look for the catch.
Right, because we're so conditioned to expect one.
Exactly. We are entirely conditioned to believe that building a business requires navigating this massive labyrinth of gatekeepers. The traditional narrative tells us, you need a hefty upfront investment, a pristine resume, decades of specialized experience, or, let's face it, the ultimate cheat code, which is a massive trust fund.
A trust fund definitely helps. It does. But this document aggressively dismantles that entire paradigm. It lays out a 2026 landscape where those old barriers to entry haven't just been lowered, they've been completely bulldozed.
Bulldoze is the right word for it.
You don't need an office, you don't need venture capital, you don't even need to be an established expert. According to this blueprint, you only need one thing to start generating income, and that is a skill. Or, really simply, the sheer stubborn willingness to sit down and acquire one.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we accept this premise, it entirely redefines what it means to be an entrepreneur today.
It absolutely redefines it. And the term we really need to anchor ourselves to right off the bat here is the skill economy. That phrase isn't just some marketing buzzword, it's the core operating system of this entire blueprint.
Right.
If we look backward, the traditional economy was fundamentally a capital economy. Your ability to play the game was dictated by your access to financial or social leverage.
Who you knew, exactly. The document explicitly points this out, noting that success used to hinge on things like inherited wealth or sheer unadulterated luck. Those are the primary currencies. If you were locked out of those, you were largely locked out of the market.
Which was the reality for 99% of people.
Exactly. But what's happening now is a massive structural democratization of leverage. The gatekeepers haven't just changed their minds, they've been structurally bypassed. In this 2026 skill economy, the new forms of capital are entirely internal.
I love how the source breaks this down.
Yeah, it boils it down to 3 specific ingredients: an internet connection, patience, and focus. That's the entire infrastructure required. Now, while this guide is framed around student entrepreneurship, the actual mechanics here are universal.
It applies to anyone.
Anyone. It doesn't matter if you're 19 in a dorm room or 45 looking to pivot out of a stagnant career. If you have those 3 ingredients, you have the exact same starting line as anyone else.
I think that's the part that really hooked me. The fact that patience and focus are literally being categorized as capital. It shifts the burden of success away from external circumstances and places it entirely on individual agency.
It makes it your responsibility.
It does. And the document doesn't just deal in theory, which is great. It provides a highly specific menu of 10 ventures to execute on this. Let's get right into the first category, which I like to think of as content and attention arbitrage.
A huge space right now.
Massive. Venture number 1 is short-form content editing. The premise here relies on the current reality of the internet, which is the absolute dominance of short-form, vertically integrated video. We're talking YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok.
Right.
We all know platforms are heavily indexing for this format, but the document isn't telling you to become a creator. It's telling you to become the infrastructure behind the creator.
Right, because the creator economy has a massive structural bottleneck. The text hits it perfectly when it says that many creators don't have time to edit.
They just don't.
If we break down the operational workflow of a successful digital creator today, they are essentially running a localized media empire. The algorithm demands a relentless feeding schedule.
You have to post every day.
Every single day. That means the creator has to be conceptualizing ideas, writing scripts, setting up lighting, actually performing on camera, and then managing community engagement. The actual mechanical process of editing, taking that raw, messy footage, stripping out the dead air, pacing the cuts for maximum retention, integrating dynamic captions, it's incredibly labor-intensive.
It's a grind.
It's the highest friction part of the entire pipeline. The creator has the audience, they have the raw material, but their time is infinitely better spent on ideation than on timeline manipulation. That creates a massive vacuum of demand.
And it's a vacuum that requires surprisingly little to fill. The blueprint doesn't recommend spending 4 years at a film academy.
No, not at all.
Or buying a $10,000 editing bay. It points directly to lightweight, intuitive software, things like CapCut or Premiere Pro. But what I found really sharp was the specific go-to-market strategy it outlines. It says, start with small creators, charge small, build experience. It's essentially advising you to treat your early client work as a paid internship.
What's fascinating here is the risk mitigation strategy embedded in that advice. When you target a smaller creator, you're interacting with someone who feels the exact same time constraints and burnout pressure as a massive influencer.
But they don't have the budget.
Right, they simply don't have the budget to hire an established agency. So by stepping in and offering your service for a very nominal fee, you completely remove the friction of the sale. You are solving a painful problem for them at a price point that makes it a no-brainer.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. But more importantly, from the perspective of the person learning the skill, you are fundamentally inverting the traditional education model. In the old economy, you went into debt to learn a high-income skill in a theoretical vacuum.
You paid to learn.
You paid to learn. In the skill economy, you fire up a free software tool, reach out to a mid-tier creator, and you are literally generating revenue while stress testing your skills in the real market. You're getting paid to practice.
Getting paid to practice is a phenomenal way to frame it. And it transitions logically right into the second venture in this attention arbitrage space, which is social media management.
Yes.
If editing is about optimizing a single piece of content, this is about optimizing the entire distribution strategy. The document frames this as providing a service to local brick-and-mortar small businesses. We're talking about posting schedules, caption writing, and engagement replies. Simple strategy stuff.
Stuff that seems simple to us, yeah.
Right, but the competitive advantage the text highlights here isn't a certificate or a degree. It explicitly states you already understand social media culture. That's your advantage.
This is where we see generational habits transforming directly into monetizable assets. We really need to look closely at that dynamic. Think about the profile of a standard small business owner. You have a phenomenal local baker, a master plumber, or the owner of an independent hardware store. They have spent decades mastering their specific, tangible craft. But to them, the digital landscape is actively hostile.
It's terrifying to them.
It is. The subtle nuances of digital body language, knowing why certain emoji feel sarcastic, understanding the pacing of a trend, or knowing the unwritten rules of how to respond to a customer complaint in a public comment section, it feels like an entirely foreign language. They are terrified of getting it wrong, so they either ignore it completely or do it poorly.
Exactly. They know they should be doing it, but the cognitive load is just too high.
Precisely. Now contrast that with the target audience of this document. A student who has grown up entirely immersed in this digital ecosystem doesn't have to learn social media culture. They possess native fluency in it.
They just know it intuitively.
They absorb the context simply by existing online. The blueprint is essentially telling them to package that native fluency and sell it across the generational divide. You are bridging a massive cultural gap for a business that desperately needs digital foot traffic.
And the operational scale suggested here is highly pragmatic. It notes you can realistically manage 3 to 4 clients part-time.
Which is plenty to start.
Right. That creates a predictable, recurring revenue stream without requiring you to build a massive, complex agency infrastructure.
It keeps you agile.
It's extremely contained and highly scalable within those limits. But let's say you don't want to deal with clients at all. What if you want to capture the attention arbitrage for yourself?
That's the dream for a lot of people.
It is. And that brings us to venture number 3, YouTube automation channels. The concept here pivots from client services to building your own proprietary digital asset.
This is a huge shift in the model.
Totally. The text outlines creating faceless channels focused on highly specific, evergreen niches. The examples it gives are business, tech, history, or space. And the execution is essentially a digital assembly line. You're writing scripts, using voiceover tools, maybe self-recording if you want, and layering stock footage.
This specific model challenges one of the most deeply entrenched assumptions about digital media. The prevailing myth is that to build an audience, you must possess a highly charismatic, magnetic on-camera personality.
You have to be Mr. Beast.
Exactly, you have to be a star. The automation model entirely divorces the value of the content from the personality of the creator. By selecting niches like space exploration or historical events, the value proposition to the viewer is pure information and storytelling. You are relying on the inherent fascination of the subject matter.
The topic is the star.
The topic is the star, but the linchpin of this entire strategy is summarized in one crucial line from the text. It says, consistency matters more than perfection.
That line really jumped out at me. We hear so much about quality over quantity, but in this specific context, the blueprint is heavily indexing on consistency. Why is that the critical variable here?
Because you are dealing with an algorithmic ecosystem, not a human film critic. A YouTube automation channel is fundamentally a long-term compounding play.
It's a slow burn.
A very slow burn. Unlike the freelance editing or social media management where you secure a client and get paid on Friday, building an audience is an exercise in delayed gratification. The algorithm does not reward a single cinematic masterpiece uploaded once a year. It requires data.
It needs to figure out who to show it to.
Yes. It needs a reliable, predictable stream of content to understand who your target audience is and how to serve your videos to them. When the text emphasizes consistency over perfection, it's warning the entrepreneur against the trap of preciousness.
Don't overthink it.
Exactly. If you spend 3 weeks agonizing over the perfect word choice in a script or searching for the absolute best piece of stock footage, you break the feeding cycle. The goal is to build a scalable library of assets. You have to feed the machine reliably until that library hits a critical mass where the back catalog starts generating passive advertising revenue.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We are moving away from the established ecosystems of video and social media into the absolute frontier of what's possible right now. Section 2 of the document shifts into new tech and niche knowledge, and venture number 4 is a perfect example of how fast this economy moves.
This is my favorite one.
It's wild. It's AI prompt writing services. The concept is selling the ability to construct clear, highly effective instructions for generative AI models like ChatGPT, Midjourney, or Claude. The text actually opens this section by acknowledging the skepticism, saying, yes, this is real.
Because people still don't believe you can get paid for this.
Right. It points out that while businesses have access to these incredible AI platforms, they completely lack the operational capacity to utilize them effectively.
We are observing the inception of an entirely new professional class in real time. This is why the document takes on a sudden tone of extreme urgency, telling the reader, learn it now, you'll be early.
The window is open right now.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's the classic garbage in, garbage out problem of computer science, but scaled up to artificial intelligence.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You have a business owner who reads the headlines. They realize they need to integrate AI, so they purchase an enterprise license for an advanced generative model. They sit down expecting magic and type in a prompt like, write a blog post about plumbing.
And it spits out garbage.
Exactly. The AI, lacking any specific constraints, spits out a robotic, generic, fundamentally useless 500-word essay. The business owner gets frustrated, assumes the technology is overhyped, and abandons it.
Because they think the tool failed, when in reality the instruction failed.
Exactly. They have the raw computational power, but they lack the steering wheel. The prompt writer acts as that steering wheel. They are the essential translator between human commercial intent and machine logic.
A translator. I like that.
A skilled prompt writer doesn't just ask a question, they construct an environment. They assign the AI a specific persona, they define the exact target audience, they set strict negative constraints on what not to do, they establish the brand voice, and they dictate the precise formatting of the output.
It's almost like coding with plain English.
That is exactly what it is. The blueprint highlights that this is a new skill. Few people know it well. The individual who can efficiently extract high-leverage work from an AI model holds immense value in the 2026 market, and that skill is acquired entirely through iterative testing, curiosity, and patience.
It's fascinating because it's a technical skill that doesn't actually require writing code. It requires extreme linguistic precision. And speaking of precision, venture number 5 is micro-niche newsletters. We're looking at platforms like Substack, designed for long-form, owned audiences. The concept is writing just once or twice a week. But the critical qualifier here is micro-niche. The document explicitly advises against broad topics.
It's not just write about sports.
Right. It suggests focusing on things like specific AI tool breakdowns, hyper-focused productivity systems for students, or highly curated business news for beginners. And the growth timeline it proposes is very deliberate. Build the audience first, monetize later.
That deliberate timeline is the only way this model works. You have to understand the difference between a rented audience and an owned audience.
This is a huge distinction.
Massive. When you build a massive following on a social platform, you are essentially sharecropping. You don't own the connection to your followers, the platform's algorithm does, and they can change the rules overnight.
And they often do.
They do. An email list, however, is an owned digital asset. You have a direct, unfiltered line of communication to the end consumer. But to get someone to give up their email address in 2026, you cannot be a generalist.
You have to give them a reason.
By focusing on a micro niche, say, the legal implications of generative AI for freelance designers, you are filtering out 99% of the internet to become an absolute necessity for the 1% who care deeply about that specific intersection.
You're trading sheer volume for intense engagement.
Precisely. You establish trust through hyper-specific utility. And that trust is what eventually allows for the monetization phase the document mentions.
The ads, the sponsorships.
Yes. Once you have a concentrated, highly engaged readership that opens your emails every Tuesday because you solve a specific problem for them, the revenue mechanics fall into place naturally. You can introduce premium tiers, secure highly targeted sponsorships from companies desperate to reach that specific demographic, or sell your own digital products. But none of that happens without the initial uncompensated labor of building trust through consistency.
I love how these first 5 ventures are incredibly forward-looking.
Yeah.
They require interacting with new platforms and emerging behaviors. But let's ground this a bit. What if someone listening feels like their plate is already entirely consumed by their current responsibilities? This brings us to Section 3, which focuses entirely on monetizing what you are already doing. The document calls it the student advantage, though again, the mechanics apply to anyone engaged in deep learning.
Absolutely.
Venture number 6 is digital notes and study materials. The concept is taking the exhaustive notes you are already producing, formatting them cleanly as PDFs, and selling them on platforms like Gumroad. The text points out a simple market reality. Students love summarized notes, especially for difficult subjects.
The beauty of this venture is its ruthless efficiency. It addresses the core reality of the academic or deep learning experience, which is that you're already studying.
You're doing the work anyway.
You are already expending the massive cognitive calories required to sit through complex lectures, decode dense textbooks, synthesize the information, and structure it into a coherent format. In the traditional model, the return on that massive labor investment was entirely restricted to a single letter grade on a transcript.
And then you throw the notebook away.
Right. Once the exam was over, that intellectual property was dead. It just sat on a hard drive. What this venture proposes is capturing the exhaust of your existing labor.
Capturing the exhaust. That's a great concept.
By spending a marginal amount of extra time to format those notes into a clean, highly readable document and uploading them to a digital marketplace, you transform an ephemeral academic exercise into a durable digital asset.
It's the ultimate low-friction product. You do the hard work once, and the distribution costs absolutely nothing. If you nail the formatting on a notoriously brutal subject, you could have 100 people buying your $5 study guide while you're asleep.
Passive income in the truest sense.
Exactly. And if you have that level of mastery over difficult subjects, venture number 7 offers a more active, higher-ticket way to monetize it, which is online tutoring. A classic, for a reason. The concept is straightforward. If you excel in math, English, science, or coding, you teach the juniors just behind you via Zoom or Google Meet. The strategy the text lays out is a classic land and expand model. It says, start with students in your area, then expand online.
This is arguably the most economically resilient venture in the entire blueprint. The document states it with absolute clarity. Education demand never goes down.
It's so true.
We can experience massive macroeconomic volatility, technological disruptions, or shifts in consumer spending, but the parental imperative to ensure their children have an academic advantage remains a constant. It's virtually recession-proof.
Parents will cut back on everything else before they cut back on their kids' education.
Exactly. And mechanically, it is the ultimate zero capital enterprise. You hold zero physical inventory, you require no complex supply chain, and your software overhead is a free video conferencing account. Your entire business model is simply transferring the structural knowledge already housed in your brain to someone who needs it.
And I like the advice to start local.
Yes. By starting locally, you eliminate the initial problem of digital obscurity. You build your baseline reputation through community word of mouth, gather tangible testimonials, and refine your pedagogy. Once that foundation is solid, you leverage the internet to completely detach your earning potential from your local geography.
Detaching from geography is such a powerful lever. But what if you're listening to this and thinking, well, I don't have a specific technical skill to teach, and I really don't want to create content?
There's still an option for you.
There is. That leads us to Section 4, which explores what the document calls middle person and asset-light models. Venture number 8 is local service arbitrage. I have to say, this one completely reframed how I think about local economies.
It's brilliant.
The concept involves identifying high-demand local services. Cleaning, landscaping, specialized plumbing, tutoring. You build a highly optimized, trustworthy digital storefront, like a simple Facebook page or website for these services. When the customers contact you, you don't pick up a mop or a wrench. You outsource the job to vetted local workers and take a margin. The text makes a bold claim here. It says, no technical skill needed, just organization.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the application of pure information arbitrage to the physical world. Why does a middle person model function effectively here? Because you are simultaneously solving a severe pain point for both sides of a fragmented market.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the demand side first. When a homeowner realizes their basement is flooding or they need an emergency deep clean, they are in a high-stress state. They do not want to spend 3 hours navigating a clunky directory or calling 5 different contractors who don't pick up the phone.
They just want it fixed.
They want to land on a clean professional website, click a button, and trust that a vetted professional will arrive. You are solving their discovery problem. Now, look at the supply side. The professional cleaner or the master plumber is highly skilled at their physical craft, but they often despise marketing.
Or they're just bad at it.
Right. They rely on erratic word of mouth and have no idea how to optimize a search campaign or manage a digital booking system.
Right. They want to spend their time doing the actual work that generates their hourly rate, not figuring out why their website is broken.
Exactly. So the entrepreneur steps into the void between those two realities. You build the digital bridge, you capture the chaotic demand, organize it, and hand it to the professional on a silver platter. The margin you collect isn't a fee for physical labor, it's compensation for resolving information asymmetry and reducing friction in the marketplace. You are the organizational glue.
And that concept of removing friction and staying asset light translates perfectly into venture number 9, the print-on-demand store.
Another great asset-light model.
The concept is designing customized apparel or merchandise. Simple t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, using platforms like Printful or Teespring. But the critical mechanism here is that you don't physically produce anything yourself. The blueprint highlights that by using specialized fulfillment networks, the product is only printed and shipped after the end consumer has placed the order.
This model systematically eradicates the single most fatal risk in traditional retail, which is inventory.
Inventory will kill a small business.
Historically, if you wanted to launch an apparel brand, you had to make massive speculative bets. You had to guess which designs would resonate, guess the distribution of sizes, guess the color preferences, and then sink thousands of dollars into purchasing that physical inventory up front.
And then they sit in your garage.
Exactly. Then you had to store it, manage it, and pray the market actually wanted it. If your guess was wrong, your capital was permanently trapped in boxes of unsold t-shirts. Print on demand reduces that capital risk to absolute zero. The physical item quite literally does not exist until the moment the customer's payment clears.
It's brilliant.
This liberates the entrepreneur entirely. Instead of managing supply chains and warehouse logistics, 100% of your cognitive bandwidth can be directed toward the only 2 variables that actually generate revenue: creative design and targeted marketing.
Which brings us to the final specific business model, venture number 10, freelance graphic design. And this ties directly into the mindset of reducing friction. The concept is providing digital design services, logos, thumbnails, posters, social media posts for small businesses.
Oh, classic gig.
But the tool the document champions here is incredibly accessible. It explicitly states you don't need to be a professional artist because intuitive, template-driven platforms like Canva have democratized basic design.
Canva changed the game.
It really did. But the real insight here is the operational progression the text provides. It says, improve skill, increase price.
That formula is the fundamental physics of the freelance economy. It is a perfect, self-correcting feedback loop. When you first launch this venture, your skills are nascent. Therefore, your pricing must reflect that reality. As the document notes, small businesses need affordable designers.
The big agency rates.
A local hardware store cannot justify a massive retainer with a high-end creative agency just to get a flyer made for a weekend sale. They need fast, functional, clean design at a low price point. By servicing that tier of the market, You are essentially getting paid to undergo rigorous training.
There's that concept again, getting paid to learn.
Exactly. Every single asset you deliver forces you to become marginally faster. You begin to intuitively understand layout, hierarchy, contrast, and visual communication. As your portfolio thickens and your execution speed increases, the quantifiable value you deliver to the client increases. Consequently, you raise your rates. You are continuously funding your own real-world education through client revenue.
Okay, so we've walked through the 10 ventures. We have an incredibly diverse menu of options, ranging from building algorithmic assets to arbitrating local physical labor. But an idea, even a great one, is entirely worthless without the correct operational framework.
Execution is everything.
This brings us to section 5 of the blueprint, and frankly, this is the engine that actually drives the entire 2026 skill economy. It's the execution playbook. And the text doesn't mince words here. It opens with an aggressive, explicit warning regarding the danger of dilution. It commands the reader, don't start 5 businesses at once, choose one.
This is a profound warning because the fundamental nature of risk has changed. In the physical economy, the barrier to entry was the risk. You couldn't accidentally start 5 restaurants because you didn't have $5 million.
Right.
In the digital economy, where the barrier to entry is effectively zero, the primary threat to an entrepreneur is no longer a lack of capital, it is a lack of concentrated attention. Distraction is the ultimate failure mode.
It's so easy to get distracted.
When it costs nothing to launch a newsletter on Monday, stand up a print-on-demand store on Tuesday, and start a YouTube automation channel on Wednesday, the psychological temptation is to try and capture every single perceived opportunity. But focus is a finite resource.
You spread yourself too thin.
By fracturing your attention across multiple complex systems, you ensure that none of them receive the critical mass of sustained energy required to escape the gravitational pull of starting from zero. The document is enforcing discipline. It demands that you constrain your enthusiasm and weaponize your focus into a single, specialized point of impact.
And once you make that choice, once you select that single point of impact, the document enforces a very specific timeline. It mandates what we can call the 6-month rule. It tells the reader, give it 6 months. Stay consistent.
6 months is a long time when you're seeing zero results.
Right, and then it drops this incredibly sobering dose of reality. It explicitly warns you will feel slow progress in the beginning. That's normal. So what does this all mean? Why is the blueprint so focused on ensuring the entrepreneur anticipates this period of stagnation?
Because mismanaged expectations are the leading cause of entrepreneurial death. The modern digital ecosystem, ironically, the very same ecosystem this document is teaching you to leverage, has fundamentally warped our perception of time and success.
We just see the overnight success stories.
We are constantly bombarded with highlight reels of viral explosions and overnight millionaires. But the text forces a hard reality check. It reminds the reader that business is not about quick money. It's fundamentally about skill building.
Skill building.
During those first few months, when you are cold emailing small creators to edit their videos and hearing nothing back, or when you publish the 4th edition of your micro newsletter and the open rate is stuck at 12 people, your brain interprets that friction as failure. It triggers a panic response telling you to pivot or quit.
Because it feels bad.
Normalizing that slow progress is a psychological defense mechanism. If you intellectually understand that friction is simply the sensation of acquiring a new baseline skill, you won't surrender in month 2 just because the exponential curve hasn't kicked in yet. You are committing to a 6-month foundation of reps and sets.
And the mathematical payoff for surviving that 6-month valley is staggering. The document introduces this concept of the compound interest of skills. The text states, if you build skills at 18, 19, or 20, by 25, you're ahead of 90% of people. It's arguing that early acquisition doesn't just give you a linear head start, it completely alters the trajectory of your professional life.
Think about the underlying mechanics of compound interest in a financial context. A relatively small amount of capital invested early grows exponentially over decades because the interest generated eventually begins generating its own interest.
Money making money.
Money making money. The exact same mathematical principle applies to human capital within the skill economy. If you learn the mechanics of short-form video editing at age 18, you aren't simply memorizing a static piece of information. You are acquiring a foundational mental model for digital communication.
You're learning how people consume content.
By the time you are 20, you naturally combine that editing capability with a deep understanding of algorithmic distribution. By 25, you have stacked so many complementary high-leverage skills on top of one another that you have built an impenetrable competitive moat.
An impenetrable moat. I love that.
You have created an insurmountable lead over the individual who waited until they received a traditional piece of paper at graduation to begin interacting with the actual mechanics of the modern market. The skills cross-pollinate and compound.
I think the idea of building an impenetrable moat around yourself is incredibly motivating. But let's be honest, the biggest hurdle for most people isn't a lack of desire, and it isn't even a lack of discipline. It's the paralyzing fear of not being ready.
Perfectionism.
Yes. We want the branding to be flawless, the website to be perfectly coded, the business plan to be airtight. The blueprint provides a direct antidote to this perfectionism right at the very end. It delivers this fantastic final battle cry. It says, start small, start messy, but start. It strips away every last excuse for delay.
It does, because the 2026 economy disproportionately rewards raw velocity over pristine preparation. The environment is simply too fluid.
It changes too fast.
If you spend 8 months in isolation, meticulously crafting the theoretical perfect business plan for a YouTube automation channel, by the time you are finally ready to launch, the algorithmic landscape will have fundamentally shifted. Your perfect plan is obsolete before it even meets the market.
Why?
When the document commands you to start messy, it is officially granting you permission to be an amateur. It is permission to launch a digital product that has a typo in the third paragraph, or to use a logo that you build in 10 minutes on Canva. Theoretical perfection crafted in a vacuum is useless.
The market has to tell you if it's good.
The immediate, chaotic feedback you receive from the real market on a messy, imperfect product is infinitely more valuable. The physical act of starting is the only way to initiate the feedback loop that drives actual, tangible iteration.
It's just an incredibly empowering framework to operate from. Let's bring this entire deep dive full circle. We opened today with a document that made a seemingly impossible claim that the old rules of gatekeeping and capital requirements are dead. And after breaking down the actual mechanics of these 10 ventures, from deploying generative AI to capturing the exhaust of your study habits to arbitrating the friction in local service economies, it becomes undeniable that the text is entirely accurate.
It really is.
The era of needing permission, needing a trust fund, or needing a decade of specialized experience to generate independent income is over. The internet, extreme patience, and an unwavering aggressive focus have completely replaced the old guard. The infrastructure is there, waiting to be leveraged.
It is a landscape defined by total accessibility, which actually presents a fascinating new problem. This raises an important question that builds on the document's intense focus on self-directed skill acquisition. If the tools required to build substantial leverage AI platforms, global distribution networks, digital storefronts are now entirely democratized, and if a 19-year-old can utilize this blueprint to build a highly scalable, high-margin, automated digital business from their laptop, what does this actually mean for the foundational structures of the traditional economy?
It shakes the whole foundation.
We are looking at a scenario where a highly focused individual in the skill economy can out-earn and outmaneuver a mid-level corporate executive, all without a resume or a degree. If the traditional markers of competence, the university credential, the corporate entry-level grind, are being bypassed entirely by these messy, hyper-efficient microventures, we have to wonder, how long until the traditional institutions realize they are no longer the gatekeepers to success, but merely an expensive detour? If the tools to start a business are now entirely free and available to everyone, and no technical skills or capital are required, then the only thing separating you from success isn't your resources, it's your resilience. In a world where anyone can start a business tomorrow, how will you train yourself to be the one who doesn't quit on day 180?
Wow. If a 19-year-old with an internet connection is the new standard of leverage, the traditional institutions might already be obsolete. And that question of resilience over resources is a massive paradigm shift to leave you with today. Thank you to everyone tuning in and joining us on this deep dive into the 2026 skill economy. We hope you walk away equipped to look at your own leverage differently and maybe, just maybe, ready to start building something messy today. Keep learning.